If you're at a place in your life where you feel stuck, in this video, I'm gonna share with you an exercise that helped me come out of that rut and kind of give me more clarity on what I should be focusing on. Okay, so what we have right now, first is you stuck. And then over here, we have the version of you that you wanna be. So this is future you. In order to get from this to this, we have to travel along this path right here. The tricky part about that is we don't typically, life isn't very linear, right? So typically we end up going down this path and then we go this way and then we go veer off the other direction. We get distracted here, we get back on track, and it ends up being a mess until finally we get to where we want to be, right? Well, I found that the best way to figure out how to go from here to here is to first start with your future self, right? So the first thing I like to do is to define who this is. So first off, that starts with what do you want, right? What are you trying to do? Get in touch with your why. So what's your goal? So maybe that's you want to improve your health. You want to maybe start exercising. You want to lose weight, or you want to improve your relationship with your spouse. So figure out what that goal is. Who is this person here that you're trying to become? Are they a millionaire? Are they a business owner? Are they just figure out who that is. And that usually is defined by the goal. So first define what the goal is. And then the next step is to ask yourself, why? Why do you want that goal? That's important because that's going to reinforce you whenever you feel like you're going to be, you don't want to do it, right? Because there's going to be times where you're probably not going to want to do it. I'm not going to say that you should just willpower your way through it. I'll talk about that more in just a second. But the why behind the what is really important because it's what drives you and gives you that energy to be able to push forward, right? So next thing we want to do, we figured out what the goal is, who that person is. We figured out why we want to be that person. Next is to figure out, what? What do we have to do to become that person? So what I like to do for this is I like to pretty much describe that character, right? So what is the character traits of that individual person, right? So what are their habits? What are their beliefs? What are their character traits? Because once you understand these things, you now have a pathway to get to where you're trying to go, right? So let's use the example. Let's say you're just trying to get in better shape, right? You're trying to get some muscles. And in order to do that, right, what's some of the habits that you need to build, right? So one of them would be, right, you need to you need to track your macros, drink water, sleep, train. And so that you see where I'm going there. Those are some of the habits, right? Well, what are some of the beliefs? Well, believe they can grow, right? So you might be like me. Whenever I was first getting into weightlifting, I thought there was no way that I could put on muscle, but that's just because I didn't really believe that I could and I didn't have a good understanding, right? So there's a knowledge gap there too, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. Another belief that you might have is that weightlifting is hard, but this character believes that weightlifting is fun or easy. So you want to figure out what those beliefs are because those are things that you'll have to overcome. And then the next one we have are character traits, right? So one might be discipline. Another one might be focused. Another one could be mental toughness. So basically what you're doing is you're outlining that what, right? So what are the habits, the beliefs, and the character traits of that individual? That way you know the habits that you have to develop. And I challenge you to make this list as long as it has to be, so that because the better you understand the characteristics of this person that you're trying to become, the more likely you're going to achieve that desired outcome. 4 is how. How are we going to become this person? And that is where you come up with your plan. For me, I like to follow what is the 12-week year, And so basically what I do is I set goals for myself every 12 weeks. Essentially, it's quarterly planning. But in 12 weeks, how can we move closer towards our goal of becoming this character? Now, in 12 weeks, you cannot accomplish all the things that you need to do. So let's say the first 12 weeks, the first week of that 12 weeks is learning how to work out. And then the next thing might be creating a workout routine. And another thing might be come up with a meal plan. Right? So those are specific things that you will do in those 12 weeks. And the 12-week goal is not to focus really on necessarily on outcomes, but focusing on inputs, right? So in that 12 weeks, you should have learned how to work out. You should have come up with a workout routine, and then you should have started with a meal plan. Now, those are not very big goals. And for given this, depends on the complexity of what the thing is, but you can figure out how to do those things in 1 week. And in the 12-week year, it talks about like every week counts, right? Each week is a month in your 12-week goal or your 12-week year. So that first week, you should be able to accomplish more than most people do in a month. And so coming up with those things should be quick and simple. And ultimately, the goal should be to start working out and getting feedback as quickly as possible. Now, the goal here with the house stage is to not get discouraged and just look at it as like a way of getting feedback, right? You're going to, the first week when you work out, just from personal experience, if you've never worked out before, you're going to feel like crap. But the goal is just to figure out, okay, I need to start putting the right food in my body so that I can recover. I need to start sleeping at least 8 hours a night. I need to make sure that I'm drinking plenty of water for my body weights. And so all those are things in the how section is like, that's whenever you're going to come up with the plan. And we all know the cliche saying, like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So the 12-week year is the best way that I've found to be able to get things done. So go through that and come up with your 12-week plan for these next 12 weeks. And then at the end of those 12 weeks, you can kind of evaluate your performance based off of that. So in the book, they talk about like there's a weekly scorecard and stuff like that. You can get into the nitty gritty of the 12-week year. I don't have time in this video to explain that. But really what you're doing is you're taking your goal and you're defining how you're going to accomplish it. So obviously with your goals, you want them to be smart. So you want them to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So let's say we want our goal to be in the first 12 weeks, we want to be working out 5 days a week, and we want to have a good idea of what our macros are, and just we want to be up to speed on how to work out and do it healthy. So we're going to say, is that specific? Yes, it's specific. Like we want to be working out 5 days a week. All right, is it measurable? Yes, we're going to make sure that we're doing that, tracking, do it, working out 5 days a week. So we can check that box, check that box. Is it achievable? Can we work out 5 days a week? And can we be knowledgeable in fitness? Yes. We can do training, we can watch YouTube videos, and we can look up all the stuff, and there's probably like a free course you can find online. Is it relevant to what your long-term goal is? Yes, it is. Because it's something that we want to achieve. We want to become more healthy. We want to become, we want to build some muscle. It's relevant to the type of person we want to become. And then time-bound. Can we accomplish this in 12 weeks? Well, can we establish a routine of working out 5 days a week and starting to build some muscle? Yes, I think that we can, and we can become educated. So that is a 12-week goal. Now, with your 12-week goals, you want them to be a little bit challenging, so that might not be like challenging enough. I think for the average person that's never really been into fitness for, that might be a little bit challenging, but if you have some experience in it, you're going to want to make this something a little bit more challenging. If not, it's not going to be as rewarding, and the feedback loop on that is not going to be, there's not going to be any incentive behind it actually being effective. So kind of push yourself, just like everything, get outside of your comfort zone, adopt that growth mindset of just trying to challenge yourself. Just to recap, the best way to get unstuck from where you're at is to really define where you're trying to go. And so that's like figuring out what your purpose is. For me, I wanted to grow my YouTube channel. And I wanted to start a new YouTube channel because the YouTube channel that I did have, I grew it to like 85,000 subscribers, but it wasn't something that I was truly passionate about. So then I said, okay, well, here's where I am currently. This is the person that I want to be, the YouTube channel that I want to have. How do I get from here to there? Well, it started with just figuring out what that goal was, why I wanted to do it. The why is so important, one that it's easily overlooked. You know, that's your mission, vision, and purpose. You don't have to go all the way into that, but just have a strong why, because that's going to light a fire under your butt. What you need to do to be able to get to that thing, right? So what are the steps that you need to take to be able to reach that goal? For me, I need to be posting consistently on YouTube. I need to be looking up topics that people are actually interested in, trying to solve problems for my audience that they have. And then how am I going to do that? Well, I need to come up with a plan on how I'm going to do so. And that's where you create systems. You come up with your goal, you figure out what your plan is going to be, and then you create a system that's going to make it sustainable for the long term. A big part of this is don't forget that you need to take breaks in between. I can't talk too much about the 12-week year because I just don't want to go on a tangent. I want to keep it relevant to the video. But in the 12-week year, they talk about you need to have strategic blocks, which are 3 hours a week for specific work. Buffer blocks, which are 2 hours a week for answering emails and doing more administrative tasks. But then there's also 3 hours a week for breakout blocks where you just take a break from work and you don't do any work at all. Because if not, you end up working yourself into the ground, you end up burning out, and you don't end up accomplishing any goals. And for me, my military background is easy for me to willpower my way into what I was trying to do. Things that prevented me from getting to the other side was that burnout. And when I'm doing creative things, I don't really create that good of work whenever I'm just running on fumes. So you need to take some time to rest as well. So it's good to be focused on your goals, but you also need to take breaks as well so you can decompress. All right, that's it. Keep learning, keep growing, keep going. I'll see you in the next video.